Since there may be some people online, I'll sort of start or tell you what we're planning to do, which isn't much. So the reason we're here this morning is to act on House Bill 436, which was the a major change to the retirement plan of Group 2, an enhancement for certain certain members. And that has been delayed. The House put it into House Bill 2. It was taken out by the Senate, so it's not in the final version of the budget in any way. And so, but the bill itself was retained by our committee, and it's still here. And we're going to be executing it later today in the big room. So the question is, what are we going to do? Okay. And now we have a quorum. So okay. Slightly giving a little background that we have to act on House Bill 436 because it was retained. And the original plan was to wait for there was a commission dealing with this issue and to wait for their recommendation and then use this bill as a vehicle for that issue. But as I understand it, that's not ready, and so we may have another plan. So.
So good morning. Sorry, I'm a little late. So there's been a lot of perhaps drama in the whole issue. We were hoping, as Dan or Representative McGuire said, to have something ready to present. The commission voted 8-6 last Thursday to support a plan. However, trying to get the LBA, and again, not to throw anyone under the bus because it was just way too short a time to get things together. The retirement system, Marty's been great trying to get some of the factual numbers, the financial impact, both on the state and the municipalities together, which obviously takes some time. So the plan going forward is that, and I have to give Representative Ebel some credit for putting this bug in my ear yesterday. I was thinking that we could go to the Rules Committee once we got everything done for a late introduction of a bill to address what 436 did and some other additions that the Retirement Commission suggested. And Karen said, well, gee, I think the Rules Committee, I'm sorry, Representative Ebel, said the Rules Committee some time ago said if a commission, and I'm sure all of you already know this anyway, but I had forgotten, but if a commission makes a recommendation, you can file a late introduction. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get all the facts together, allow the retirement system and the LBA and OLS to get everything lined up. As I think all of you sitting out here know that the division takes a lot of pride in their work. We want all the numbers. We're not going to just push something forward without the facts, especially the financial facts, which we'll have in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, I guess we'll act on the bill before us. We can either retain it, or not retain, but interim study or ITL it. I know Dan had some amendments that he had talked about at one point if we brought this forward. But again, the process going forward, somebody will introduce the new legislation. There'll be a hearing, a public hearing. It'll go to ED&A first. They'll have at least 1 or 2 public hearings on it. Then if it's successful getting out of there on the floor of the House, it will come here. There'll be an expedited process, at least in the House. We'll try to push it forward. The Speaker wants everyone to know he's completely behind getting this issue behind us once and for all and supports what we're suggesting here. And at that, unless Representative McGuire has something else to add or anybody else.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first of all, I'd like to just say that what the Retirement Commission ended up doing, as I understand it, has 2 particular features. One is that it's just a change of the multiplier from 2 to 2.5%, and that it applies to all Group 2 current employees, not just this particular group. And it just happens that that's exactly what I was arguing for 6 months ago when I got shouted down. So, so I'm in favor of it. And, but the one thing that's so the choices for House Bill 436 are simply ITL and wait for this bill. But we do have a prepared amendment, which, if you remember, House Bill 50 was the bill that I convinced you to pay down the unfunded liability with $50 million, right? And that would get us a little bit less in debt, a little quicker, and the also consequence of that would be employers would pay a little bit less towards the unfunded liability in the future. And so we passed as the House fairly strongly. We tabled it and we put it in House Bill 2, and the Senate ripped it out. So so we have an amendment today. If we wanted to, bring up that issue again and push it forward, we could make House Bill 436 into House Bill 50 and send it forward that way. It's just a possibility. I don't know that it's worth doing or whatever, but anyway.
So would you like to offer that amendment? I'm assuming Melissa has it. Yes, Representative Cambrels.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarification. If they proceed with the plan that you discussed, it would be a totally new bill, and 436 has nothing to do with it.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Representative McGuire.
Thank you. So I want to point out that this 50 million is slightly different than if in the bill we've been talking about, the one for Group 2, you simply raised the amount by 50 million, right? Because the retirement system separately tracks the unfunded liability for the different categories, right? There's an unfunded liability for teachers and for other employees and for police and for fire, as I understand it. And so this is 50 million across the board, sort of, for everyone. But in the bill we've been talking about, which is strictly for Group 2, that if we added 50 million to that, it would strictly change the unfunded liability for police and fire, right? So there's a slight difference. I mean, it's probably somewhat inconsequential in that, well, not exactly, right? Because this would change the rates a little bit for schools, for example, and that wouldn't, right? So, but in any case, I guess I will offer this. I'm in favor of it. I think we have the money sitting around in the Education Trust Fund doing nothing. And so, so I would like to pass this.
Is there a second to Representative McGuire's amendment number 2458H? Well, for discussion, I'll second it. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Cambrels, anything?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So basically, it's a fiscally responsible thing to do, probably, right? We have the money, it's surplus money that we'd be using, and we'd be bringing down the liability, which in turn would lower the rates going forward. It would help us to reduce our debt in the state.
Could I respond?
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, so the way it works is if you put in $1 into the unfunded liability today, you don't have to put in $6.75 next year, right? And $1.13 the year after, and so on, right? And so it's effectively paying down a debt that is accumulating at 6.75%. And that, as I understand it, is the highest rate of debt of any of our, it's more than state bonds and so on. So to me, getting 6.75% is a reasonable thing to do.
And if we do end up going with the other plan with the commission, this all goes away. It would not, or would this amendment go on to, you said, House Bill 50? It would.
So this would be this would be a separate bill. It's basically saying to the Senate, we want to, you took this out of the budget. We didn't have a committee of conference. This is something we want to argue for, right? But it's separate from the other thing. Yeah.
Further questions for Representative McGuire? Marty, would you like to comment at all? Knowing you traveled all the way over here, might like to say something.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was hoping to blend into the wallpaper today, but didn't think that was likely. Just the only comment is I just looked on my phone at the fiscal note for the House version of HB 50 and saw that that's where you would look for the fiscal note to see the rate reduction. I think it's between 0.9% of pay for employees up to 0.21% of pay for fire, and then the range in between. So basically, it would reduce the unfunded portion of the employer contribution rates, not just in the next rate cycle, but going forward. This would be akin to, if you had, a significant credit card debt and you put extra money on next month, it's just less that you're going to be paying in interest over time. So again, we would not have any position on this bill as from, it's a policy decision for the legislature and a fiscal decision, but just wanted to come up and say all that.
Thanks, Marty. Any questions for Marty? Seeing none, thanks. All right, seeing no further questions, I will comment that I will support Representative McGuire's amendment. I think a lot of work was done back prior to the budget. It made a lot of sense. I think Marty's comments add to that. Makes a lot of sense, and along with what Representative McGuire's already stated. And when the clerk is ready, we'll have a vote.
Okay.
I don't know where everybody is today, but
Make sure who's here and who isn't. Okay, this is a vote on Amendment 2023-2458H, offered by Representative McGuire and seconded by Chair Leishman. Representative McGuire,
Yes.
Representative Cambrels,
Yes.
Representative Hewitt.
Yes.
I'm just going to comment, in light of everything that we have ahead of us with respect to the retirement funding, I will be respectfully voting nay, and it's not because I think paying down the unfunded liability is a bad idea. Thank you. So the clerk votes nay. So is that Chair Leishman.
oh, well, yes.
Okay, so it's 4-1. And the amendment to HB 436 passes.
All right, thank you.
Ought to pass with amendment? Okay, I'll move ought to pass with amendment.
And I'll second it.
Okay.
Probably no need for an additional vote, just,
Okay. All those in favor say, no,
Aye.
okay, aye. Aye. Okay. All right,
okay, the vote being 4-1, the McGuire amendment passes and will be taken up by the full committee at 10 a.m.
As long as Marty's here, could I ask?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, sure.
So I sent Marty a few questions about what the Retirement Commission did. I should say Mr. Carlin. And so I wanted to sort of clarify, when you say, he responded that, so the way the Retirement Commission apparently wrote their bill was that it was giving 50 million now, but that there would be some cost to municipalities and others later on.
Well,
Is that right?
if I could, before Marty responds, they actually didn't write anything. They had a concept that they voted on. Yeah. So that's what made it a little more difficult. There was never any written
I see.
language. It was
I
like
see.
what this might do, the possible impact financially on municipalities, on the state, but there was never any draft.
I got it. Okay.
And since the commission has not written their final report, there's nothing really go on there. So it was a vote on the concept, and that's what's made it a little more
Okay.
difficult to get our hands around it. So Marty presented to us different concepts that had been batted back and forth, and there were some numbers that they were fairly comfortable with the retirement, but nothing had really been firmed up.
I see. So, but here's my question. So when I asked about that, he said to me that if you put in 56 million now, then that pays for the change in unfunded liability for this increase in benefit, but it doesn't pay for the normal cost of the increase in benefit in the future. And what I wanted to make sure is that I understand what that means, all right? So is if you put in 56 million now, that pays for all of today's employees, anybody who's now working, and how much their retirement is expected to be, but it doesn't pay for the guy hired next year and who's getting a better benefit than he would otherwise. Is that right?
Yes, just to kind of build out on the yes a little bit. So there are two pieces to, that go, well, besides the medical subsidy, there's two pension pieces that go into funding. The unfunded liability, which is being paid off over a period of time, and the normal cost that Representative McGuire referred to, and that's the cost of benefits as they're accrued. That's what the actuary says, based on all the provisions in the statute. The employer needs to put in X amount percent of my pay to fund my benefit when I retire, or Melissa's benefit, or any public employee. So that's the normal cost. This proposal by the commission, and the commission, by mutual agreement of the Senate President and the Speaker, who were both on the commission, agreed to authorize funding for us to reach out to our actuary to sort of cost out some of these concepts. So this particular proposal, because it affects current and future Group 2 members, so people who haven't been hired yet, but, will be hired, tomorrow or 10 years from now, you can't accurately capture the full funding of that because you don't know what inflation and demographics and everything else are going to be in the 2030s and 2040s. So the 55.9 million was the unfunded liability portion of this change. That's basically the backfill. Anybody who's affected by this, their multiplier in some cases is retroactively larger if they had more than 10 years based on, when they hit their anniversary. So there's that liability piece. And what would, if the ultimate legislative proposal funds that unfunded piece, there is a normal cost piece associated with the future ongoing costs of this change, for members, current members and members as they're hired in the future. I think one of your questions, Representative McGuire, was, if you paid more than 55 million, could you offset some of the future costs? And the answer is yes. I'm not sure if an actuary could say, if you give us 65, it'll even it out for the first 5 years. I don't, but it's like, it's the same principle as your House Bill 50 amendment, though. It's like the more you put on the unfunded, it's just less interest on your credit cards you're paying later.
May I follow? Sure. So let's talk about a specific example, which would help me. Suppose there's an employee who's currently working, has 15 years in,
Yeah.
and will retire 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So there's an extra benefit for the 15 years already,
Yeah.
but there will also be an extra benefit for the coming 10 years, right? So does the 56 million pay for all of that for this particular employee, or is the next 10 years part of the normal cost that's not being paid by the
Nope,
56?
that's all the backfilling. So if you had, so 15-year employee, so they would have started in 2008. So they would have hit their 10th anniversary in 2018. I think they would be in the 49 and 24 with a 2.1% multiplier, depending on their hire date. But they had less than 4 years as of 1/1 of 12. So, basically they've been accruing a multiplier, and that's been part of the rates of 2.1% a year for every year work. So, they under the commission proposal, they accrue that multiplier for the first 10 years. So that's 21% of their AFC ultimately when they retire. But beginning on their 10th anniversary, which in this case is 2018, the multiplier is 2.5 going forward. So that's 5 years for that individual, where instead of a 2.1 multiplier, which we were funding towards, it's 2.5. So it's like 2% more in the pension, type of thing. And that's the backfilling part of the unfunded. Obviously, the farther back you go, the unfunded is more associated with the folks who have more service now, because you're accruing it. And for somebody who was hired yesterday, there isn't really any unfunded associated with that person. It's just a going forward cost. Although, these are all blended together, so there's no disproportionate separate rates for different people based on, when they started. But, that's how it works. So that 15-year person, they worked to work up to 25 years, say, so that 15 years, is 2.1 times 15 is 31.5. I think, that's what the current multiplier would have generated. At 2.5, that's 25, 37.5. So, it would increase the percentage of their average final compensation, that they retire with, and that increases the lifetime benefit. So that's in a nutshell. I am in the middle of working on some handouts. If I would have rushed over here if this was going to go out today, but it gives us more time to vet them and fine tune them.
So very quickly for Representative Sweeney and Grassi, as far as 436, when the commission recommendations, we're going to hold off. We're going to expedite a bill, but a separate bill to deal with the commission's recommendations allowing retirement, the LBA and OLS to come up with good verbiage, good fiscal notes, because it was just a little rushed. And knowing that you two are both absent, Representative McGuire pushed forward an amendment to add $50 million back, House Bill 50, that we passed here, and that was passed by the division 4-1. So that's kind of the.
You will get a chance to vote on it.
And yeah, 10 o'clock, and I know that both parties have caucuses at 9:30 or whatever, so, which is now, so we're all good. Hey, Jerry.
We're all set.
All right. That's the job. No. All right, McGuire. Hey, Dan, I just got this last night. This is their draft. I wanted to give you a copy. Oh. Obviously, it's their first run through, but I thought you might like to look
Make
at it.
comments.
Yeah.
Okay.